Hi, I'm Shannon. I'm an alcoholic. Yeah, thank you, actually, everyone, for this opportunity. I was sitting here thinking like it's pretty unreal for me to be clean and sober for a year. When I hit my 6-month mark, I was like, oh my gosh, wow, 6 months, and now it's been a year. So, yeah, I never actually thought I'd ever get to this point in my life. I genuinely thought I was going to die from this disease. So I'm grateful because it's not really my accomplishments. Like, I wouldn't have been able to do it without the fellowship, my sponsor, and my higher power. So I'm really grateful for that. I wanted to start off by sharing about that reading. Someone read it to me this morning, and I felt like it was very relevant to how I'm feeling today, because I was afraid of sharing my story simply because I'm scared that it ends up like just shitty, which is that ego side of me, but also because I don't really like my past and my history, but that reading just made so much sense about it being like not an autobiography, but like the key to the lock. So there's a lot of God in that for me. But yeah, I remember when I was like a kid, I felt like I never really got an instruction manual to life. Like, everyone seemed to be doing the thing, and I didn't know how to do the thing. I felt socially awkward. I felt really like I had no idea what was going on. Kids were always playing, having fun, making friends, and I had no idea how to interact with them. And then I thought to myself, like, maybe they're faking it. Maybe that's how this is supposed to be done. So I used to, almost like a mockingbird, pretty much just like watch and mimic people around me and start like building my personality based on little bits of everyone else's personalities. So I guess from a very young age, I was already not very authentic as a person. I kind of just wanted to copy paste what everyone was doing because I felt like maybe that's going to make me feel a part of, because it was like a massive disconnect for me. And as I grew older, obviously the manipulation and the dishonesty and stuff got like bigger and more vast as well, because initially, like, my lies and my dishonesty started with simple things, like someone would say they like Pokemon, I don't, but I'll tell them I do too, because that sounds cool and I want to be your friend. But as I got older, I became more intricate, more manipulative, and I realized that dishonesty and manipulation is a massive tool for me in order to feel like I survived, because I always felt like it was me against the world. Like, I always felt alone, even like in a crowd, even with my family, with people that I've known my whole entire life, my lifelong friends. I still didn't feel like I was actually their friend. Like, I always had to put up a front and behave in certain ways for people to accept me. And I started going to crazy lengths to get this acceptance, where I started lying about like personal problems of mine in order to get attention. I lied about being colorblind, which I think is pretty insane. I had to hold on to that for 4 years. I had to go as far as doing research so that I can actually lie when people ask me what color is this, and I can be like, okay, I can see it's red, so it's brown, so that I can lie about that. Crazy stuff, it's mad. Crazy stuff like waist trainers, starving myself, exercising too much, filters, like just creating a whole entire profile that's not my life on social media to try and portray a life that wasn't mine but that I wanted to have. And then, yeah, it just continued. It continued to the point where I thought that maybe if I get a pacemaker, that would make me sound cool. So I was in the emergency room once in the hospital, and it was actually just because I was coming down and my heart rate was slow, and they thought I had bradycardia. And I'm like, oh, that sounds awesome. People will feel sorry for me if I have a pacemaker. That'll make me fit in. So just all this madness because I always wanted to be a part of. And through all of that chaos, I also like kind of hung onto anger. I felt like that was always my go-to emotion, because for me it was a very empowering emotion. It always made me feel justified. So I used to fight a lot as well. I was a very violent kid. I had to go for anger management, and I used to bite people. And as I got older as well, like in a lot of situations in high school and in bars and stuff, I would be the first one to raise my fist. I genuinely, I was violent and I was aggressive, and even right before I came to treatment, I would still smash and break stuff. It was the only way I knew how to feel somehow empowered and not afraid and alone, because I guess I was just always afraid and I wanted to be liked. And fast forward past all of that, I actually wanted to touch more on rock bottom and treatment, because I guess that's like the most important stuff for me. Where I guess rock bottom for me was over a space of a couple of years, but the last few months before treatment, it was genuinely the worst. I went to psychiatric hospitals and I started that cycle, and the moment I left, then I would just end up drinking and using again, and then I'd go back and I would detox for a couple of weeks. They would chop and change medication, because I started medication from a very young age, I think it was 8. And then another year later, chop and change, and it was that cycle. And how in our sister fellowship they say jails, institutions, and death, the institution cycle started becoming shorter and shorter throughout the months. Like from it being every year, it started becoming every 6 months. And then right before I went into the house on the hill, it was, I think, 2 psychiatric hospitals in the space of a month. And I knew it was over, because like the thing for me about this disease is that it takes, from the beginning, it starts taking small things for me. And it first just took my friends, but I was like, okay, that's fine, I can make new friends. And then it was family, and I'm like, okay, but I have more family. And then it was work and like my place and all of this stuff. And that wasn't enough for me. It wasn't enough for me to stop. I was so powerless to this stuff that I started losing my mind. This disease started taking like my body. I started getting sick, and that was also not enough. And I knew I was so desperate for help, but I had no idea what to turn to. And someone suggested to me, my psychiatrist suggested to me, go to the house on the hill. And I found out a lot about it. I realized, like, I knew I was going to have to stay long term. I knew I was going to go to the halfway house, all of that stuff, before I agreed to go there, because I was like, there's no hope. So I suppose the only thing I walked into the house of the hill with was willingness. And that willingness, I guess, got me to this point, because when I was there, I guess the experience and what happened was that I was still putting up a fight. I complied for a while, but whenever my sponsor suggested something, like, I put up a fight, and that didn't work for me. And there was still a lot of dishonesty, there was still a lot of disconnect, and I stayed there for 5 months, and I kept trying and trying and trying, but there was something that I wasn't doing right, and it was that I wasn't getting honest with myself. I didn't have a good enough connection with a higher power. I understood God as a concept and not as an experience, and also I was still fighting. And but it was all very low-key and underlying, because it was in my head and somewhat in like my behavior, but I changed enough for people to kind of on the outside, still very fake, see, okay, cool, well, Shan seems to be doing all right, but there was still that act, that facade that I held on for so long, because I felt like that was my tool to survive, so I was still very disconnected from people. And I suppose, like, after those 5 months, I went in the halfway house, and because it's like more of a microscopic scale of what was happening on the house of the hill, it started slipping out sideways, and people started picking up on this, and I started building resentments, and like I wasn't in a very good space. And there was a point where I genuinely wanted to leave, and I decided, okay, you know what, screw all of this, everyone playing the blame game, being the victim of the situation because of my own resentments and my own dishonesties. And I figured I'm going to get onto my bicycle, because that's a great idea, cycle it to go sell it, use that money for a taxi to go somewhere else, to rent a car to go to Joburg, because, you know, all of you guys are wrong, and I'm taking my big book with me because I'm still on the boat, which is mad. I put it in my backpack with some apples. Yeah. And when I got onto my bicycle, there was someone in the halfway house that questioned me and said, do you have integrity for your recovery? Do you want this? And I said, yes, I do. And I truly did. I didn't want it there, but I did want recovery. And I still had the willingness. I had no other spiritual principle except willingness. I had to like just keep practicing and learning that stuff. And he said to me, okay, well, my experience was that you're going to relapse if you go, so call your sponsor and ask if you can stay. And I think out of all the suggestions that I kept fighting, I knew I couldn't fight that one, so I did. And I got the options of going back to treatment or going to Johannesburg. So I was like, treatment, or I know what's going to happen. And I went back to treatment. And sitting in isolation, my new sponsor came and sat in front of me, and she said two things to me that I still think about a lot, even today. She explained the serenity prayer, and she said the wisdom to know the difference is God, and there is no God in your life right now. You do not have God. You do not know the wisdom. You do not have the wisdom to know the difference. You need that. And she also said to me, what I need from you, Shannon, is blind obedience. And I completely understood that. Like, regardless of what she tells me to do, I have to do it to the T if I want to have this. So I did, and I hated it. There were so many moments where I was fearful of confrontation. I was fearful of following suggestion. I was fearful of sharing. There were a lot of rules and consequences set in place for me to follow, but I did it. I did it every time, even if I did it with regret, because every time I followed that suggestion blindly, I came out stronger and better on the other side. And I guess that's what I was also doing wrong the first time. I wasn't following suggestion. And from that point to this point, I can already feel the difference, if that makes sense, because I academically understood everything, but I never truly connected with it internally. And I guess that was my biggest problem. And by following these suggestions and just doing exactly what I was told and trusting the people around me and not myself, I realized that it works. I don't know how. I don't have to question it. I don't have to overcomplicate it. It works. So I kind of just went with it. And things started happening in my life. I felt a sense of peace. I felt a sense of responsibility. And my sponsor also suggested maybe for me to just start listening to people instead of speaking so much. And I started doing that as well. And I actually felt connected. There was a point in one of the concern groups, because I didn't follow a suggestion and it came out sideways, that I got concerned, and the counselors sat in front of me and they said, we don't really know what else to do with you. We don't have hope for you. You're never going to be a part of. And that stung. It broke me. I remember that day because I was like, I feel so hopeless. I feel like I'm back on the first day of treatment. Like, I have no idea what to do. But again, that willingness just kept me going, because I decided, okay, well, they might not know what to do. My sponsor told me, keep it simple, go back to basics, so I'm just going to keep trying and not stop. And I suppose that's how I got to this point, because throughout all of that stuff, just because I was doing what I was meant to, just because I started connecting and experiencing God instead of thinking it was this concept, I got through some pretty heavy things in my recovery, because my first year wasn't a breeze. I know a lot of people say that your first year in recovery is supposed to be like fun, but for me it really wasn't. Most of the time it felt like Groundhog Day. I had a lot of obstacles in my way, one of which was my dad passing away. Sorry. Yeah, and because of this program, I'm coping in ways that I didn't actually think I would. And because of this experience and having been in recovery, I can actually help other people through it too, which I think is so beautiful. I never thought that I would find gratitude in grief. And I've been closer to my family because of it as well. And there are other things as well that I'm capable of getting through now, simply because of this program, because I'm in AA, that I never thought I would. Small stuff, but the small things make the big things. Like in active, I was incapable of taking a shower, eating. I would wake up every afternoon at around 4 and start drinking. And then I would just go back to bed, and that was my cycle. Just wake up, use bed, wake up, use bed. And I didn't know how to communicate with people. I couldn't make eye contact. I couldn't share like how I am right now. None of those things were possible. And now, also because of this program, I wake up at like 5 or 6 every morning, which is remarkable for me. That's something I never thought I would be capable of doing. I have a job, and even though it's just a simple, humble waitressing job, my manager relies on me and gives me responsibilities which I was incapable of doing. And it's all just because I kept trying to apply myself. And even though there are mistakes that are made most days, if not every day, like, it's gotten so much better than what it was. And I guess with that also came a lot of self-respect and self-acceptance, because I remember in active, like, I didn't have any integrity, I didn't have any dignity, and now, like, I actually love myself for who I am. There are days where I feel incredibly inadequate, but I know that that's just my head and it's not me. And I know that I don't have to fake it anymore, because I guess that was one of the things I was most afraid of, is that if I had to be me, people wouldn't accept me because I'm awkward and I'm silly. But that's not the truth at all. Like, I realized that people in this fellowship love you for you. And that's the beauty of recovery as well, that you can be 100% you, and that's actually what people want for you. They want the best for you, because those were one of my fears, that I'd have to be a robot, and I don't want to be that. But yeah, back to the things that I had to overcome in treatments. And now, I suppose, like, a lot of the times, yeah, I don't know, I actually don't want to touch on my dad, I'm sorry, guys. I can touch on my family, though, and what recovery's done for that, because, like, my mom is also grieving, and my brothers are struggling too, and because I can be present now, and because I actually just, every time I have a problem, I go to my sponsor and I say, look, tell me what to do. Give me the solution in action, not in thought, because that was like my biggest fall down. She'll tell me, and applying it now has brought my family closer to me. Like, I speak to my gran and my mom almost every day, and that's something that didn't happen either. In active, like, I could sit in the car with my mom for 2 minutes and we'd be at each other's throats yelling. So that's beautiful. The same with my brothers. But the reality that I also just want to talk about, like, and explain is that, you know, a lot of these beautiful promises and stuff do come true, but the reality is that a lot of those things are also going to be difficult, because my relationship with my brothers are really bad, and they're probably not going to get better anytime soon, if ever. And that's okay, because, again, because of this program and because I'm, like, where I am at now, I have a lot of acceptance around that stuff. I didn't initially. I also kind of lost my train of thought, if I have to be honest with you guys, because I wanted to get to a point and I forgot what it was. So I'm kind of waffling now. But instead of waffling, I'm actually just going to leave it there and say, like, I'm super grateful. And thank you. And thanks for letting me share.